Sound check. Testing mic 1 2 3. Mic testing. Sound check.
resource persons present here today. Welcome to your Senate. This public hearing of the Committee of National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, and Reconciliation, jointly conducted with the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, Ways and Means, and Finance is now called to order.
Welcome to your Senate.
Allow me first to acknowledge the presence of the members of the committee who are with us today, Senators Francis Tolentino and Robert Padilla.
Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and
With the presence of our colleagues, we now declare the presence of a quorum. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 6th public hearing of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security. Thanks to our colleagues in both houses of Congress, we successfully passed measures relating to the past and present of the defense sector. We approved on third reading the long overdue adjustment of disability pension of our veterans, which has been sent to Malacanang for signature of the President. Hopefully, this will be signed into law very soon. We're able to shepherd into enactment the legislation that addresses the grumblings and demoralization within the military concerning their professional advancement and promotions, which became Republic Act number 11939. Your committee is also currently occupied with consultations, computation, and studies on the proposed pension system reforms of the military and uniformed personnel, or the MUP. After the past and the present, we will try to chart the future of the defense establishment with the deliberations of the National Defense Act and Self-Reliant Defense Posture, both of which are in our agenda this morning. Both are priority measures of the DND and the AFP, and both are included in the legislative agenda of our Philippine Development Plan of 2023 to 2028. We shall begin discussions on the bills seeking to update the antiquated 1935 National Defense Act, as proposed by our Vice Chairperson, Senator Bato de la Rosa, under Senate Bill 980, Senator Revilla, under Senate Bill number 1390, our Senate President Juan Miguel Zubiri, under SBN 1747, and our Majority Floor Leader, Senator Villanueva, under SBN 1946. Your committee already sent requests for position paper months ago on the National Defense Act, this being mentioned in the first State of the Nation address of our President as one of his priority measures. But we are only in receipt of only a handful of submissions, particularly from the NEDA, DFA, Government Procurement Policy Board, the National Defense College of the Philippines, the Philippine National Police, and the Philippine Coast Guard. Thank you for your prompt response. I strongly encourage the resource persons to also submit their respective position papers on the measure. It will be followed by discussions on an equally important measure, the revitalization of the Self-Reliant Defense Posture program, which started in the 1970s and is also called the Philippine Defense Industry Development Act, or PDIDA, as filed by our Senate President and co-authored by our Majority Leader and Senate President Pro Temp Lauren Legarda, under Senate Bill number 315, Senator Revilla under Senate Bill 505, this representation under Senate Bill 682, and Senator Amy Marcos under Senate Bill 2046. It would also be useful if you could frame the discussions with the recent aggression encountered by the Philippine Coast Guard from the Chinese Coast Guard. Pinapaalis po tayo ng ating kapitbahay sa sarili nating bakuran. Hindi lang tayo basta sinabihan o binantaan, kundi binomba pa ng tubig. It is high time that we get our acts together, fortify our defense establishment from the strengthening of the defense organization, and make it responsive to the call of the times, and enable them to fully and effectively perform their mandate as protector of the state, our sovereignty, and the people, up to the upgrading of our military assets, not to proceed to war, nor provoke further aggression, but to stand up and be able to defend ourselves and to deter all kinds of threats coming from all fronts. We shall remain a friend to all and enemy to none. Ayaw po natin ang away, and we are a peace-loving nation. We renounce war as an instrument of national policy. Pero mahirap pong pag-usapan ng diplomasya at pakikipagkaibigan kung patuloy po tayong ginigipit, hinaharas at nalalagay sa panganib ang ating kapwa Pilipino. Having said that, your committee looks forward to your active participation in today's discussion. Before we proceed, let us give the floor to our colleagues who would like to give an opening statement. If you have any, Senator Francis or Senator Robin Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was supposed to just provide you a quorum, but considering the statement made by the good chairman relative to the incident which transpired 5 August 2023, I think this committee should take into consideration salient provisions of the proposed bills, which probably would address some appropriate responses to what happened the other day. One, I saw a provision here from the bill coming from the office of Senator Revilla relative to the military service that would be obligatory for able-bodied citizens, Mr. Chairman. So this should be totally pursued to its conclusion. I saw several items, Mr. Chairman, concerning research and development. Perhaps this committee should likewise take into consideration the current status of the PADC. PADC is the Philippine Aviation Development Corporation, which has been attached to the Department of National Defense. Parang hindi gumagalaw pa. Marami sanang magagawa doon. And look, and perhaps, Mr. Chairman, the possibility of transferring to the Department of National Defense the Philippine Space Agency, which is perhaps needed not just for monitoring purposes, but for disaster prevention. It's now lodged with the I think it's lodged with the Office of the President or the Department of Science and Technology. Doon sa research and development, Mr. Chairman, I would probably during the period of amendments, once this is brought to the floor, I would probably jibe this with the present measures being heard by the committee of Senator Angara. Merong tatak Pinoy, yung bibilhin natin, yung mga gamit ng Pilipino. I hope you understand that. Yung gawa natin, hindi lang yung sa Bataan, kung hindi yung ginagawa, pwede na rin yung sa Danau. Di ba? Nandito lahat yon. And then sa cybersecurity, Mr. Chairman, for the information of this body, I have sent 33 scholars abroad to the University of Cincinnati, composed of captains, majors, and lieutenant colonels. Konti lang ang Air Force na pasali doon last year, and then probably this year, meron pa tayo. We should strengthen our cybersecurity command. Hindi ko nakita masyado rito. ROTC should likewise be a component of this measure. For the information of this committee, we're launching the ROTC Games August 13 in Iloilo City for the Visayan leg. Thereafter, Zamboanga, where Senator Robin Hood Padilla will be the guest speaker, and then the Luzon leg in Cavite, and then the National Championship in Metro Manila. Lahat pong ito, pag pinagsama-sama natin, ay makakadagdag po siguro doon sa ating pinag-uusapan. Yung nangyari nung kamakalawa, yun po yung masakit. Kung ano yung magiging tugon, hindi lamang ng Senado, na executive branch, kung hindi yung sa pagpaplano ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. Mr. Chairman, for the record, it was not just, baka hindi alam ng iba, it was not just the Chinese Coast Guard who were there present when we resupplied the Ayungin Shoal troops. Kasama po doon ng Chinese Navy. Yung isang vessel natin nakapasok, yung isa yung hindi nakapasok. For the information of the body. These are no longer highly confidential intelligence secrets. So siguro kung ano yung magiging bahagi nitong mga pinag-uusapan natin ngayon, ay napakahalaga. Yun lamang po, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this opportunity for allowing me to speak. Salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Francis Tolentino. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Bato de la Rosa. Senator Bato, you may want to have an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair, honorable members of this committee, and to our resource persons. First, let me manifest my appreciation to our hardworking chairman, Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, for conducting this hearing to discuss proposed measures on the amendment of the National Defense on Self-Reliance Defense Posture Revitalization. Mr. Chair, as a former soldier, I have advocated and continue to push for legislative measures that will protect our country's sovereignty against both internal and external security threats. Most recently, our foreign policies and defense capabilities are constantly being challenged by the Chinese, particularly on the West Philippine Sea. While we aim to modernize and strengthen our armed forces through procurement of defense equipment and material, improvements should not only be limited to the development of defense capabilities. Modernization should likewise include ensuring that the military structure is adaptable to the changing times. This was likewise the call of President Bongbong Marcos during his first State of the Nation address, when he recognized the need to amend the decades-old National Defense Act of 1935. We acknowledge and welcome the call of the President to prioritize this legislative measure. Indeed, we must not surrender even a single inch of our territory. While we rally behind him and his wisdom in peacefully resolving our territorial dispute, we also recognize and support his moves to accelerate the modernization of our troops. Hindi lamang ang mga kagamitan ang dapat bigyang pansin sa usapin ng modernisasyon. Dapat din nating paglaanan ng panahon ang pagpapahusay at pagsasanay ng organisasyon na kinabibilangan ng ating kasundaluhan. As we move forwards modernizing our armed forces, we must likewise prepare for the sustainability of these procured assets. During the budget hearing last year, one of the issues raised was the lack of spare parts and insufficient budget to sustain and procure, which among others result in the non-operability of air assets. Ngayon, higit kailanman, Mr. Chair, ang panahon para palakasin ang kakayahan ng ating bansa upang ipagtanggol ang ating soberanya. Our soldiers are already working very hard on the ground, but the protection of our sovereignty is not only the responsibility. It is the responsibility of all of us. Through legislation, let us provide our troops with all the necessary tools they need to equip them in battle. Higit sa lahat, all the necessary tools they need, higit sa lahat, iparamdam natin sa kanila na hindi sila nag-iisa. I am looking forward to a productive and fruitful discussion with all the resource persons today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Bato de la Rosa, for your enlightening opening remarks. Senator Robin Hood Padilla.
A'udhu billahi minasyaitanir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Muli po, binabati ko po kayo ng magandang umaga, Ginoong Pangulo, at ang atin pong mga idolong senador, Senator Jinggoy Estrada at Senator Bato de la Rosa. Isang magandang umaga po. At sa lahat po ng ating mga panauhin. Ako po ay madaling pumunta dito sapagkat napakaganda po ng mga panukalang batas na ito. Sapagkat ako po ay matagal nang, pasensya na po kaya kung yung bigote ko iba-iba kasi dahil sa medyo iba-iba yata ang direksyon ngayon. Alam niyo po, sa atin pong konstitusyon, dahil ako po ay nasa komite ng amendment and revision ng Constitution, meron pong isang nakakabahala doon. Noon pong 1973 Constitution, nakalagay po doon bago ang Pangulo ng Pilipinas ay maaring magdeklara ng martial law kung merong imminent danger. Sa 1987 Constitution po, tinanggal na po yun. Nawala na po yung imminent danger. Ang nakalagay na po doon, kung meron ng rebellion, meron ng invasion, sa madaling salita, huli na yon. Sa pangalawang punto po, yung pong sa Constitution din po, sinasabi doon, na malinaw ng ating mga tao, mga citizen natin, kailangan sa kahit anong oras ay handa na ipagtanggol ang ating bansa. Ang hindi ko po naiintindihan, bakit pa kami dumadaan sa proseso na ipinagpipilitan namin kaming mga pabor na magkaroon ng mandatory military service ang mga Pilipino, parang hirap na hirap pa kami. Hindi ko maintindihan, mahal na tagapangulo, kung bakit parang ang ating mga saligang batas ay minsan mas mababa, nagiging mas mababa sa mga normal na batas. Samantalang malinaw na dapat ang saligang batas ay siyang mayor. Siya dapat ang pinakikinggan, siya dapat ang ating sinusunod. Ngayon, itong mga panukalang ito, napakahalaga po nito, ang kapal. No? Napakahalaga po nito dahil ang question natin ngayon sa buong mundo, handa ba ang Pilipinas ipagtanggol ang sarili niya? Alam naman po natin lahat kung ano ang nangyayari ngayon sa Ukraine. Ang Ukraine po, katulad ng sinabi ng bagong AFP Chief of Staff natin, General Bronner, nakakasurvive sila sa gerang ito dahil ang mga civilian nila ay tumutulong sa military. Ang malaking question ngayon para po sa ating lahat, kailan po ba natin talagang uobligahin ang ating mga kababayan na pumasok na dito sa military service? Kasi puro tayo reklamo. China, binomba tayo ng tubig. Puro tayo salita. Kulang tayo sa gawa. Sana, sa pamamagitan po ng pagdinig na ito, mahal na tagapangulo, atin na pong in English ma-realize na tayo po ay namamangka sa isang ilog na napakalakas na ng alon. Sana, yung patungkol po dyan sa usapin ng martial law na mailagay yung imminent danger uli at ito pong military service ay maganap na. Yun lamang po, mahal na tagapangulo. Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat, Senator Robin Hood Padilla. May we now request our COMSEC to please acknowledge our resource persons for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Our resource speakers for today from the Department of National Defense, Senior USEC Irineo Espino, ASEC Eric S.D., from the Department of Finance, Attorney Marlito Bugna, from the Department of Trade and Industry and Bureau of Investments, Mr. Reynaldo Lines, Mr. Elvin Raymond Garcia, Ms. Alfea Bravo, Mr. Dennis Gabriel Manimbo, as well as Mr. Wilfredo Artigo Jr., Ms. Isabel Cebu. From the Department of Foreign Affairs, we have Department Undersecretary Hans Mohaimin Siriban. From the Department of Budget and Management, we have Attorney Tricia Baraan, Mr. Rainier Adrian Barida. From the National Economic and Development Authority, we have USEC Carlos Bernardo O. Abad Santos, Mr. Philip Libre, Ms. Cristina Mortega. From the Department of Information and Communications Technology, we have Engineer Gladys De Ocampo, Engineer Maria Sinag Abelio. From the Armed Forces of the Philippines, we have Major John Michael S. L. Hamero, Philippine Army, Major Jermery Balberan, JAGS, Colonel Vener C. Malabanan, JAGS. From the Commission on Higher Education, we have Attorney Frederick Michael Spaki Farolan. From the Office of Civil Defense and National Risk Reduction and Management Council, we have Director Jose Harry Barber. From the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, we have Yusek Reynaldo B. Mapagu. From the Government Procurement Policy Board, we have Mr. Jamar Bareng. From the National Security Council, we have Assistant Director General Maria Carmina Acuña. From the National Intelligence Coordinating Agency, we have Assistant Director General Manuel M. Orduña. And that would be all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much to our ComSec. Now we can proceed now with our first item in the agenda, the National Defense Act. Only some few questions. I do not know who would want to answer my question. We recognize the need to update the 88-year-old law, Commonwealth Act Number 1 of 1935. The law is indeed very, very obsolete and antiquated, as it was passed during the Commonwealth period, where the Philippines is still a colony of the United States of America. Can you describe in actual terms the organizational limitations posed by the existing law with respect to defense operations that warrant streamlining and reorganization, especially that this law is also superseded by various executive issuances? Ano po ang hindi natin magawa o ma-achieve sa aspeto ng national defense and security dahil sa kasalukuyan umiiral na batas? And, maybe Yusek Espino.
Honorable Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, may I be allowed to read my opening statements?
Please, please.
Honorable Senator Jinggoy Ejercito Estrada, Chairperson of the Committee on National Defense, the honorable members of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace and Unification and Reconciliation, other attendees, good morning. Foremost, please allow me to extend the profound regrets of Defense Secretary Gilberto C. Teodoro Jr. for not being able to attend this morning's public hearing, as the schedule coincided with other equally important engagement. Nevertheless, the Department of National Defense is grateful for the opportunity to convey our position on the proposed legislative measures seeking to amend the National Defense Act and the revitalization of the country's self-reliant and defense posture program. As much as the Defense Secretary supports the amendment of the antiquated National Defense Act, the utmost legislative priority of the department, apart from the military pension reform, is to modernize the DND proper. To reiterate the Defense Secretary's standpoint, the DND's primary role is to serve as resource manager and service provider to its attached agencies, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, the Government Arsenal, the Office of Civil Defense, the National Defense College, and the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office. In order to effectively carry out its functions, it is necessary to strengthen and build up the capacity and capability of the DND proper. To better illustrate the necessity, the Secretary noted, among others, that while the stakeholders base and the assets under the DND's management has greatly increased from his first stint as Defense Secretary 15 years ago, the structure of the DND proper remained stagnant and unchanged. Despite having estimated stakeholder base of over 1 million individuals and managing assets exceeding 100 billion pesos in value, the DND proper is only afforded 327 authorized plantilla positions, majority of which are with low salary grades. Furthermore, there is a need to afford DND proper the flexibility to adjust the emerging and unforeseen security challenges. On the matter of revitalizing the country's self-reliance and defense posture program, the Defense Department strongly supports this initiative, provided that the same is fully funded by the national government. We likewise support the exemption of the SRDP program from the inordinate restrictions imposed by various auditing and procurement laws. Lastly, we recommend that DND proper be accorded the ability to invest in emerging and disruptive technologies abroad, subject to the NEDA Investment Coordination Committee guidelines. Dear Honorable Senators, please be assured that each of us in the Defense Department, under the leadership of Secretary Gilberto C. Teodoro Jr., aspires and strives to give each and every Filipino a professional defense establishment that is highly responsive to a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous regional and global security environment. With strong support of this august body, we are hopeful in realizing the vision of making the Philippines a strategic player in the Asia-Pacific region by 2028. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you very much, Senior Undersecretary Espino. Anybody of you wishes to have an opening statement before we proceed? None? Yeah, Yusek Mapago.
The Honorable Chairperson of the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security, Peace, Unification, Reconciliation, other members of the Honorable Committee, fellow resource persons, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. The Philippine Veterans Affairs Office fully supports Senate Bill number 980 filed by Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Senate Bill number 1390 filed by Senator Monbong Revilla Jr., Senate Bill number 1747 filed by Senator Juan Miguel Zubiri, and Senate Bill number 1946 filed by Senator Joel Villanueva, all pertaining to the National Defense Act. We concur on the provisions of these legislative measures, specifically on the mandate, organization, and the powers and functions of the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office. And these provisions support our current and future efforts in ensuring the welfare and well-being of our country's veterans and in perpetuating the memory of their heroic deeds. Rest assured that we offer our full support and assistance to the committee as it discusses these bills. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Yusek Mapago. Who would want to answer my first question? Maybe from the DND? Asek.
Mr. Chair, good morning po. As pointed out by Yusek Espino, Mr. Chair, among the constraints of the department currently is that we only have 324 plantilla positions. And having a stakeholder base of over 100 million individuals, the client-to-manager ratio is currently low. There is also the restrictive defense procurements being restricted by the various auditing and government procurement laws. Mr. Chair, if I may, kadalasan nga po, Mr. Chair, na nahihirapan tayo when it comes to foreign currency fluctuation. Being restricted by these various procurement laws, minsan po tinataman tayo ng currency fluctuation, mas napapamahal pa po yung mga binibili nating equipment. That's why we are in full support of both. Good morning.
I would like to acknowledge the presence of our Senate President, Mig Zubiri.
Morning, everyone.
Continue.
Yun nga po, Mr. Chair. The restrictive auditing and procurement laws, it also hampers the operations of the department, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Asek D. I would like to give the opportunity to Senate President Migs to have his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Sorry, I'm a bit late. First of all, pleasant good morning to everyone, all our distinguished guests today, especially our chairman. Thank you for calling this hearing. Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank, of course, your committee for taking up the Philippine Defense Industry Development Act and all the bills that are being tackled here today. I've been strongly advocating for as a key measure in support of our ongoing efforts to build a credible and concrete defense program. Amidst growing national concern over our sovereignty, it is very timely that we now consider the merits of revitalizing our self-reliant defense posture program and build a local defense industry that would supply the needs of our armed forces. While we value our defense cooperation with foreign allies, we cannot afford to rely on them entirely. Over-reliance on our allies leaves us on the back foot, always waiting and always dependent on what they will supply us with. Nakakaawa po na kailangan pa natin halos maglimos mula sa ibang bansa para mabigyan ng armas at bala ang ating mga sundalo. Yan po nangyari nung Marawi. We are very familiar with that, Mr. Chairman. At ayoko pong maulit ang ganyan eksena kung saan umiikot po ang ating presidente sa iba't ibang bansa para humingi ng bala at armas para sa ating mga kababayan na binubuhis ang buhay nila para sa ating demokrasya. Our brave men and women of the armed forces deserve more and they deserve better. We are among the top importers of arms here in the ASEAN, spending at least $338 million in arms imports in 2021, next only to Singapore at $361 million and Myanmar at $394 million. Unlike Singapore, however, we have a great deal of resources at our disposal. And unlike Myanmar, they are not operating under military rule. We are not operating under military rule. So why is our arms importation nearly as costly as theirs? A closer comparison will be Indonesia, which in 2021 allocated 3.9% of its overall government spending towards military expenditure, not far from the 3.8% that we directed towards our military. And yet Indonesia's arms imports came at only $68 million, a far cry from our 338 million. Ibig po sabihin, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, na malaki po ang manufacturing industry ng Indonesia when it comes to their arms and armaments. So maliit lang po ang ini-import nila. The defense industry has been growing exponentially. I'm talking about Indonesia. In fact, the Indonesian government is now expected to join the world's top 50 top defense companies by next year. We need to be able to produce our own needs in our own time. We have the resources and we have the manpower and the skills. And I'm quite hopeful that we also now have the political will to push this through. And in the LEDAC, Mr. Chairman, we discussed this with the President, and he's really very keen on coming up with our own defense industry. With the budget season upon us, we're going to have to once again address the still glaring gaps in the modernization of our armed forces. We are, of course, committed to increasing the budget of the AFP. We also have to look ahead, way ahead, beyond their needs over the next year, the future, and into the future of our overall defense strategy. That is why this is why PDIDA should come in, and it's a vital move towards a truly self-reliant defense program. And to be honest, Mr. President, and to look at different countries, the United States, in my personal experience, when the United States needed a sidearm and the Beretta 92 had won that bid, they required Beretta to set up offices in Atlanta, Georgia, where they built the facilities there to supply their military with the sidearms. They did the same for SIG. When SIG won after the Beretta was terminated, the contract, it was SIG Sauer. SIG Sauer, coming from Europe, had to build their plants within the United States to supply their troops with these pistols. So before I end, Mr. Chairman, I would like to mention also the National Defense Act, which is in the agenda as well. This bill is complementary to PDIDA and to the AFP modernization program. Thus, it is imperative that we pass these bills as well. As a matter of fact, I want to thank the President for discussing the Procurement Act, amendments to the Procurement Act. Because, gentlemen, what necessarily is the cheapest is not the best. We all know that, especially for defense. You may get Mickey Mouse planes. We're going to see them crash day in and day out. So not necessarily that the cheapest is the best. And also, we must give priority to those who build their armaments. Apples to apples yan, Mr. Chairman. When you build a rifle from here in the Philippines, and of course we import a rifle from the United States or Israel or other countries, as long as these Philippine-made rifles pass the stringent tests and requirements, they should be given priority because it is made in the Philippines. And the access is much easier for our troops. And of course, it will be supporting our economic agenda of the president. So, once again, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for taking this up, this committee, and you will have our full support in plenary for the passage of this measure. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, our Senate President. Yes, we'll give the priority to our Senate President to ask questions. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I hope you don't mind. I'll break protocol first because we have a U.S. Senator visiting us today, a lady senator, and that's at 11. So on PDIDA, may I just ask the DND, our DND, who's the most senior in the...
Senior Yusek
Yusek.
Espino.
Yeah. Tama po, Your Honor, Undersecretary, na wala po tayo, right now, the Bataan Armory, yung arsenal, they are limited in the production of ammo and firearms. Parang ang firearms na ninyo, or ang firearms na lang is more refurbishing rather than building new ones. Can you please give us an idea on the arsenal?
Actually, sir, that's one of the priorities of the department, yung to improve and upgrade our arsenal. Right now, the arsenal is producing small ammunitions for small arms. And of course, the Secretary wants that we will also develop ammunitions for our 105 artillery pieces. Yes, sir. Right now, we are not still manufacturing those ammunitions. We are still importing.
Is it safe to say that in our experience in Marawi, naghanap po tayo ng bala ng howitzer tsaka mortar rounds?
Yes, sir.
Even
Agree,
as
sir.
far as Pakistan?
Oh, yes,
To
sir.
be able to get
I
this
agree, sir.
ammunition?
I agree, sir. We had a shortage of ammunitions during the Marawi siege, and that is what we do not want to experience in the near future. He wanted the arsenal get upgraded and be able to produce ammunitions for our artillery pieces and for other equipment.
I know that when my meeting with Chief of Staff General Bronner and together with members of the DND, they're in full support of PDIDA as well, so that we can come up with a credible defensive posture by being able to create and manufacture these firearms and ammunition within country. So, do you agree that we should provide them incentives for these companies to be able to set up shop here, USEC?
Yes, sir. That's why, sir, during the discussion of modernizations, the Secretary of National Defense not only wanted to have this modern equipment, he wanted technologies to be given to us also, so that we can develop and reproduce the things that we need in the armed forces. It's not good if we just buy this equipment. It will be better if we will produce locally.
And I totally agree with your point of view, Yusek, but unfortunately, Chairman, pag wala po silang contract, kung wala po silang advantage, yung importation is always easier. So walang gusto magtayo ng planta dito unless there is a contract with the Philippine government. Is that correct, Undersecretary?
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Because the amount to be able to produce for example, you're going to produce A4s for the AR platform for the armed forces, the new rifles for the armed forces, even for the PNP. It takes billions of pesos, I think, to set up the plant. Even a black powder plant, even a primer plant, it takes billions of pesos. Is that correct, Undersecretary? More or less, not to build those brand new plants.
Yes, sir.
Billions yan po kasi
Billions, yes, sir.
yung equipment, $20-30 million na. So 1.5
Yes, sir.
to 2 billion ang gastos mo dyan just to build the plant alone if the equipment costs that much. So it is safe to assume that under this law, we can grant contracts so that these companies can build an open shop here in the Philippines.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We fully support that. That's why every time we talk to our foreign defense partners, we ask them what technology they can provide to us, especially on the production of spare parts for our expensive equipment that we are buying. Because sustaining this equipment, we have to have the spare parts, especially equipment like the air assets, the naval assets. These are very expensive equipment, but we need support for supplies of spare parts.
Opo, kasi kung sa Pilipinas pa lang, kung shipbuilding, magaling ang Pilipinas, hindi po
Yes,
tayo
sir.
mapapatalo.
Agree, sir.
So instead of importing, and I salute the AFP for the purchase of the Israeli patrol boats, particularly the Navy, because the Israeli company has decided to assemble the rest of the ships here in the Philippines using Cavite manpower in Cavite. That was the Aldag. I forget the name of that patrol boat. But yes, we'd like to see that happen. But also, Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, we discussed with the President during the LEDAC, and that's why he mentioned about the procurement program. Ang problema sa procurement program, Mr. Chairman, is that when you amend the procurement program, it will affect whole of government, no, the whole government yan. But under this National Defense Act, under the AFP modernization program, we can make certain simple amendments that will already exempt the AFP from this particular procurement act. Kasi kung titignan natin yung procurement act, mabusisi yan eh. Baka abuti, parang ano yan, parang very controversial because of course you'll have people on the other side saying that it's going to open it's actually going to open a can of worms in terms of issues on corruption and all that. But for the AFP, it's different because it's usually government to government naman yan eh. Di ba po? Government to government naman. You cannot go to a supermarket and buy the guns and rifles, airplanes and ships. It's really government to government. Therefore, it's a secure transaction. But, for example, yung Air Force natin po humingi ng isang squadron ng F-16s. I was told in my trip to Washington last year, few months ago, that there is a EU ally that's willing to give up their 2 squadrons of F-16s because they're going to buy the new F-35 fighter jets from the United States. These are slightly used. I think they're within 10 years. It's about 10 years old. With all the spare parts, all the training equipment, including yung kanilang simulators, for a fraction of the price of brand new ones. Ang sabi nga daw, for the price of 3 or 4 brand new F-16s, you can get a squadron of this slightly used kasi it's government to government. Tsaka we are all allies in terms of freedom and democracy. Willing po sila magbigay. Ang problema, hindi maggalaw. Ang sabi nga ng Undersecretary of Defense ng United States, hindi ma-entertain ng ating mga sundalo at Air Force officials is because of the Procurement Act. They have to buy brand new. Hindi naman natin ma-afford yung brand new. Isang brand new F-16 is almost about close to maybe $80 million together with the support equipment. But for the price of 4, you can buy 2 squadrons that's slightly used. So we'd like to make a motion that the committee will review the AFP modernization program in this National Defense Act, that we put a certain provision where it says that instead of using the word brand new, modern equipment. For example, we will be coming up with a committee report. Instead of using the word brand new, you can put modern equipment. And then, of course, instead of saying, kasi in the Procurement Act, it's the cheapest, it's not necessarily the best. So, kailangan dyan talagang has to be state-of-the-art so that hindi tayo babagsak sa cheapest equipment.
Can we just amend the Procurement Act, exempting the Armed Forces of the Philippines under the Procurement Act?
There's two trains of thought, Mr. Chairman. One is to tackle the Procurement Act. The problem is, hindi lang po AFP ang humingi ng exemption, pati LGUs eh. So, medyo madugo. Baka mabinbin at sa debate hindi maipasa. Pero at least kung sa AFP lang, I think everybody's in agreement here. Even the critics will agree that in the AFP, we should give priority to the best equipment, but not necessarily the cheapest equipment. And of course, modern equipment, but not necessarily brand new equipment. So, parang gusto natin gawin, I think wala tayong contentious issue dyan. Kung ikaw po, Mr. Chairman, ang maglalabas po nito sa plenaryo, basta lalo na yon na hinaharas ang ating AFP at ating Coast Guard, I think we will not have a problem because we need this equipment yesterday. We don't need it today or tomorrow. We needed it yesterday. We need these ships yesterday. We need to buy more ships. We need to buy more frigates, more patrol boats. We need to buy Air Force planes. We need to buy missile systems. Sabi ko nga may nag-offer na mga ano sa ating bansa, yung ginagamit na yun sa Ukraine, anti-tank na there's a name for it. Yung anti-tank missiles nila, ano yung tawag dyan? Javelins, yes, javelins. Sabi ko, hindi natin kailangan ng javelins because for the tanks to come to the Philippines, they must ride boats. So what we need is anti-ship missiles, anti-aircraft missiles, and we need to act fast. Particularly this threat from our very unfriendly neighbor in the north. I think we have to start acting fast. So, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to end by saying that you have our full support. And this afternoon, I will give another privileged speech on the incident that happened 2 days ago on the West Philippine Sea, where we were once again bullied by this neighbor of ours in the north. And nakita mo kung gaano ka tapang ang ating mga Coast Guard at private vessels. But unfortunately, wala tayong magagawa. Ang lilit ng barko natin. Pag binangga yung barko natin, lubog agad yan. Sa liit ng ating mga barko. We need to arm our Coast Guard with bigger ships as well as our Navy patrol boats, our gray ships. Ships that can stay longer periods of time in open water. Hindi pwede kasi nangyayari na yun, kung maliit yung barko mo, kailangan bumalik palagi yan. Stock up on logistics, on fuel. So, unlike the Chinese, ang lalaki po ng kanilang Coast Guard vessel, they can stay afloat for months before they get resupplied and restocked. So, we don't want any trouble, but we must be prepared for any eventuality. Hindi naman pwedeng pabayaan natin yung mga Marines natin dun sa Ayungin Shoal na gano'n na lang, na walang makain, walang pagkain, walang equipment, walang supply. And I said this time and time again, no rhyme nor reason nor logic can point out that these areas are in China, are part of China, which is 80 nautical miles from mainland Philippines to Palawan, and they are 600 nautical miles away from us. Kaya sinasabi ko, lahat ng interview ko, sinasabi ko, lumayas kayo mga Chinese. Lumayas kayo kasi Pilipinas ang may-ari niyan. But rhetoric is all, we can only do enough rhetoric. We need to help our armed forces, Mr. Chairman, as my final point. We need to give our men and women, our brave men and women, the ammunition, the equipment that they need to be able to defend our sovereignty. Wala po tayong inaatake dito. We are just defending our sovereignty. Diba? Yun ang manlulupig sa atin. Diba? Sa pambansang awit natin yan eh. Diba? So we sing that every day. And I hope now we will now have to defend our shores with whatever we have. So my final statements, we support the men and women of the armed forces, the DND, our intelligence agencies. We thank them for their bravery and we salute them for their service to the nation. So hopefully makabawi po kami, not only in this budget but also in the laws that we will pass in this committee, and the chairman will have our full support. Salamat. Maraming salamat, Chairman. Maraming salamat sa inyo. Saludo po.
Thank you very much to our Senate President, hardworking Senate President, Mig Zubiri. Yusek Espino, pag napasa ba natin itong batas nito, pwede tayo lumaban sa China?
Pwede naman, sir. Your Honor, Mr. Chair, we fully support what Senator Zubiri just said. Not only the procurement law, but also the modernization law. Because in the modernization law, we cannot buy second-hand items. That's why we have to amend that law. So in order to buy those sophisticated equipment also, Your Honor.
Thank you, Yusek Espino. Okay. One of the major proposals under the new National Defense Act is the obligatory military service for all able-bodied citizens aged 18 to 65 in case of war, invasion, or rebellion, as declared by Congress. May I know the rationale behind this, Yusek?
Your Honor, Your Chair, it is the duty of every citizen of this country to protect this country and its territory. That's why we are recommending that the ROTC will be revived so that each citizen will be trained, will be ready for any eventuality.
Yes.
That is the intention, Your Honor.
Thank you, Yusek. That is already given. Every citizen must protect our country. For example, if you enter into a war tomorrow and you require 18 years old teenagers to go into war. Kunwari, meron ako anak na babae, anak na lalaki, na wala naman full military training. Are we going to risk their lives into war? How will that be, Yusek?
Your Honor, Your Chair, of course, if we will put them in the front line, we will lose them. Because
Of course, they do not have,
they're not trained to face the Chinese. And of course, there are other skills that we can use for them, like in the medical, logistics. They can be operators, they can be drivers, they can be supply.
So, in our existing law, itong antiquated law nito, ano ba nakalagay? Meron ba nakalagay na 18 to 65? Kailangan if the country needs them?
I have to find out, Your Honor, Your Chair, if it is included in the.
Medyo
old,
nakakabahala kasi ito.
defense
If you enter
yes,
into
I
war
agree,
tomorrow,
Your
next
Honor.
week, or next month, or next year, without any training, without any military training, you cannot risk the lives of these young people. Ano malay naman ito? Lalo pag may anak kang babae, 18 years old, isasabak mo sa gera. They have to have a proper training, military training, actually. May I know what other countries have the same policy on mandatory military service?
Number one is, what I know is Israel. They require, Singapore is also one. They require the citizen to undergo a 2-year military training before they go to college degree. That is a requirement, yes, sir.
Israel?
Israel.
Ano, ilang taon?
After their secondary schools.
Do they have proper military training?
Yes, sir.
Tayo wala.
That's mandatory. Before you go to college, you are required to undergo 2-year training, military training.
Military training. But
Yes.
here in the Philippines, we do
That's
not
why
have
we
any
do not
military
have.
training.
That's why we are
That's why-
recommending ROTC will be revived so that our young people will be also trained and integrated later on in the
What
armed
other
forces
countries have
as a service.
similar military training? What other
Yes, Your
countries? Only Israel? What about the United States?
How about the U.S.? Singapore. U.S. though. Yes. I have to check, Your Honor. If,
As far as you know, it is only the state of Israel that requires a military training program before they get mobilized.
yes, sir. Also Singapore, yeah.
Singapore, meron na rin?
Yes, sir.
Anong age ang Singapore? What age?
We will check, Your Honor.
I will just proceed to my next question. Okay. Meron na Singapore?
Turkey, Cyprus, South
Tur-
Korea, Brazil. Actually, in the list, there are about 85 countries worldwide.
85 countries.
Yes, sir. They have obligatory military training.
So the Philippines must follow suit. Am I correct?
Agree, sir, Your
All right.
Honor.
Thank you, Yusek Espino. Okay, the proposed bill of Senator Villanueva prescribes progressive increase within a period of 10 years in the defense budget to 2% of the GDP. May we know the basis for this legislated prescription? What is the current absorptive capacity of the DND and its attached agencies? And how sure are we that with the legislated budget increase, they can obligate and disperse the funds given to them?
Mr. Chair, we are not aware as to what is the basis of the provision introduced by the bill of Senator Villanueva, Mr. Chair, but we fully support the progressive increase of the budget to 7% within the next 10 years.
Okay,
In
what is the absorptive capacity of the DND? If you know.
Mr. Chair, may we be allowed to submit a report on the matter, Mr. Chair?
All right. Okay. Okay. What are the crucial factors that could seriously constrain how our country could maintain security in the West Philippine Sea? Who may want to answer? Wala. Ulitin ko, what are the crucial factors that could seriously constrain how our country could maintain security in the West Philippine Sea? Kaya niyo sagutin? Hindi. You just take note of the question and just submit it to the to our committee. Sa Philippine Coast Guard, may representative ng PCG dito? Coast Guard? Any representative from the Philippine Coast Guard? Wala pa tayo inimbita rito? Alright. Siguro DND can answer. Can we just clarify the role of the Philippine Coast Guard in times of war? Kasi we very well know that the Philippine Coast Guard is under the DOTR. DOTR. In times of war, what will be the role of the Philippine Coast Guard? Should we put them under the Department of National Defense in the Defense Act?
In case of war, sir, we can probably place them under operational control of the armed forces because of their equipment. They can be used for resupply, for evacuation, for rescue.
Because under this proposed measure, the Philippine Coast Guard or parts thereof shall be attached to the Department of National Defense. Am I correct? Tatanggalin na natin si DOTR, babalik ulit natin sa DND. There is a proposal here. Are you amenable to bring it back to the DND instead of DOTR?
Mr. Chair, we have to consult the Secretary on that matter, Mr. Chair, as to whether the Philippine Coast Guard will be placed under the AFP, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there are also proposals before the Senate Committee on National Defense and Security to create a new department, the Department of Disaster Resilience. And under the third reading approved version of the House of Representatives during the 18th Congress, the disaster risk reduction and management powers, functions, assets, personnel, fund and appropriations of the Office of the Civil Defense currently under DND are hereby transferred to the Department of Disaster Resilience, and the civil defense functions shall remain with the DND. The existing organizational, administrative systems and processes of the OCD as transferred shall serve as the core organization of the department. Is this consistent with the long-term goal of the OCD? Are we moving towards the direction of unburdening the DND with disaster risk programs to focus on external security threats?
Mr. Chair, I may answer. That is correct, Mr. Chair. That is the direction of the Office of Civil Defense. Right now that we will become the nucleus of the new department if ever it will push through. Yung DRR function, sir, basically will go with it. So the civil defense function, sir, is still up for discussion, especially with the new secretary, if it will remain with DND.
What does the DND say?
Mr. Chair, the DND is all for strengthening the capacity and capability of the OCD. Whether the new, what will be created is a department, an agency, or an office, we submit to the wisdom of our legislators, but the Secretary recognizes the need and necessity. And also, Mr. Chair, there's also the premium on civil defense that the current administration is espousing, Mr. Chair.
Don't you think it will create another layer of bureaucracy if we create another department? Of course, it will entail a lot more expenses. What do you think? Hindi ba pwedeng hawakan na lang ng DND niyan instead of creating another department of ano ito? Department of Disaster Resilience. Di ba kaya pwedeng hawakan na lang ng ano, or instead of unburdening the DND, because we will add another layer of bureaucracy here until government expenses again.
Yes, sir, if I may. The direction, sir, is to enhance the Office of Civil Defense, especially in its DRR function. And one of the direction is to remove it from the DND and place it under the Office of the President. That is an alternative, sir, as also discussed earlier by the President himself.
Instead of creating a new department, are you amenable of transferring all the functions under the Office of the President? Is that
sir,
what you're saying?
Yes, sir. That is one
And
direction.
it will not entail expenses from the government if you just transfer it. If you transfer the functions under the Office of the President, am I right?
Yes, sir. Not so much in terms of resources, sir, because the existing resources of the OCD will be transferred to the new mother agency if that will push through, sir. In that case, the Office of the President. Now, what is left, sir, is the discussion whether the function of civil defense will still be left with DND, sir.
Are you having talks? Kung may iwan yung...
Yes, sir. It's
sa
an
DND?
ongoing talk between the OCD and the DND proper, sir. Just recently, the SND gave his guidance that we should be able to firm up our position on that, whether the civil defense function should still remain with DND or we bring it totally to the Office of the President, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we proceed now with the other bill that is under our agenda. Yung national defense industry.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
before we, Attorney Farolan from the Commission on Higher Education, we just have a concern with the National Defense Act.
Yeah. It's good you butted in. Are you amenable? Kasi before we had this hearing, I had a conversation with ASIC din Yusek Espino. Under this bill, yung National Defense Act, we will convert the National Defense College to National Defense University. Am I right?
Yes, Mr. Chair. That's in the proposal, one of
Yes.
the areas where we
All right.
would want to comment on, Mr.
Your
Chair.
comment on that, please.
Yes. Actually, we do have a number of comments. On the first issue regarding the National Defense University converting the NDCP to the NDUP, we fully agree and support the intent, but there are some complications regarding the conversion of a college into a university. We would we would recommend that it be included as a provision that the conversion of the NDCP to be a university, it must at least comply with the requirements also of CHED on the typology for a university, for an institution.
Kaso hindi yata sila qualified. They're only offering one course, yung MNSA.
MNSA, Mr. Chair. Actually, we can actually work out, and CHED is, as we have said, CHED is very much willing, and this has been intimated by our chairperson, who unfortunately could not attend due to some previously confirmed and equally important commitments, Mr. Chair. We are willing and committed to helping out the NDCP and also ensuring that the use of the university or the attachment of the topology university in the NDCU is not only a matter of semantics or a matter of title or label legally imposed, but rather it would truly reflect the capabilities of the institution, and the CHED is willing to do that. Thus, similar to what we do with conversion bills, we simply put there that CHED will, there should be compliance with the requirements of CHED, but CHED will also be very proactive in helping out with the defense establishment and ensuring that the conversion is done properly, and it would not lead to a degradation of the reputation of the institution as well, Mr. Chair. Handa kaming tumulong sa defense establishment natin to make it happen, Mr. Chair. But we have to do it right.
Yeah, thank you, Attorney Farolan. Any comments, inputs with regard to the statement of Attorney Farolan? Because I have a copy here. During the 15th Congress, the discussion of the bills converting the NDCP into the NDUP, I think the former Senate President really has some reservations about it. And he questioned the wisdom behind placing such schools under a university and under civilian instructors and professors, to which the NDCP admitted to having reservations about it. Sino magtuturo pag nalagay na sa university? Mga civilian?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, actually, it would really depend on on the defense establishment, the DND. They can set up their own vetting mechanism. There are civilians teaching right now in the NDCP in various serving in various capacities. Some of them are lecturers. Some of them actually took commission as reserve officers. Some of them some of them come from the uniformed service themselves, because we do have a lot of military officers who are well trained and well educated from highly reputable Ivy League institutions. So I think the NDCP right now taps them. On that matter, CHED really would not want to interfere with the process of selection of the vetting process of the defense establishment. Our primary concern, Mr. Chair, is really just ensuring that the term university is used properly, and it would not serve to be a detriment rather to the institution once the name is used outside the borders of the Philippines, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Attorney Forolan. In case that this NDCP will be converted into a university, what other courses can the DND offer? I mean, the NDUP offer, kung sakasakaling ma-convert natin into university. Any other military courses that can be offered other than the MNSA?
Mr. Chair, to put it plainly, Mr. Chair, the conversion of the NDCP into a national university is not among the current priorities of the DND. In fact, as to the National Defense Act, what we intend to recommend, Mr. Chair, is to start by modernizing the DND to strengthen the capacity and capability of the DND proper.
So this
Mr.
is
Chair.
the list of your priorities. Is that what I understand?
Because, Mr. Chair, the Secretary envisions the department as a resource manager and service provider to the AFP, the OCD, the Government Arsenal, the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, and the NDCP. To effectively carry out these functions, Mr. Chair, it is the position of the department to first strengthen the DND proper itself, Mr. Chair. Also, Mr. Chair, as you pointed out earlier, there are also several legislative measures strengthening the OCD, Mr. Chair, and strengthening the Philippine Veterans Affairs Office, Mr. Chair.
Okay, have you submitted your position paper with regard to this bill?
No, Mr. Chair. We have yet to submit the department's position paper, Mr. Chair. We intend to run it by the Secretary, given the change in leadership, Mr. Chair.
How many weeks are we going to give you to submit your position paper?
Maybe ask for 2 weeks, Mr. Chair.
2 weeks? What about
Yes,
the
Mr.
other
Chair.
stakeholders concerned? Have you submitted your position papers before this committee? Kasi kukunti lang yung nag-submit. Comsec? Comsec. Saan ka? Ilan yun na-submit na ng position paper?
As of the moment, we have 6 position papers for the National Defense Act, sir.
Can you mention?
From the Department of Foreign Affairs, GPPB, NEDA, NDCP, Philippine Coast Guard, and PESA, sir.
So, DND wala pa? Okay. Paki-submit na lang kagad yung position paper. Yes, Madam Carmina, you're representing...
The National Security Council.
Oh, yes,
NSC.
please.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have here a copy of the letter signed by the National Security Advisor, Secretary Año. It's dated May 13, and we already gave our comments and inputs to the 4 bills of the National Defense Act. So just briefly, I could have it the Xerox so that you can have a copy. But just briefly, we just said that we are in support of the bills, and then pointed to to two items that we would like the National Defense Act to consider very closely. One is to have what we call a Philippine defense industry development. We were envisioning that there could be a dedicated bureau within the DNB, within the DND that can handle the issues on investments and tax incentives for local enterprises and producers of defense articles, take care of the technology transfers as a condition for any purchase of foreign systems or assets, and the like. And the second one is we pointed to the need for the development of the reserve forces. We have already existing, we noted that there is existing Republic Acts that would be consistent with strengthening our reserve forces, like Republic Act 78998 as amended by Republic Act 10349 or the AFP Modernization Act, and then the Citizen Armed Forces of the Philippines or the Reservist Act of 1991. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, Comsec.
Mr. Chair, PVAW has also submitted their position paper as well as the Philippine National Police, sir. That would be all.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Your
You are
Honor,
from?
Chair, may I also inform this honorable body that
You are from the
National Intelligence Coordinating Agency. sir.
NICA?
Yes, sir. We already submitted our comments and inputs on Senate Bill numbers 980, 1390, 1747, and 1946, dated 27 April through the committee secretary, Attorney Norlisa Villanueva, sir.
Have you submitted your position paper?
Yes, sir.
When?
April 27.
April 27?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
NICA?
Hey, sir, if we have a copy here, sir, we will furnish the body.
All right. Having said that, if we have already received all the position papers from all stakeholders concerned, we'll conduct the TWG and we will await for the results of the TWG before I present this in the plenary. Okay, and I think all of you have expressed their intention of supporting this particular bill, and this bill has also been mentioned, I think mentioned by the President as one of the bills that has to be passed by Congress. And I have received information that in the House of Representatives, hindi yata gumagalaw itong bill na ito. So, mabuti na yung mauna na tayo kaysa hintayin pa natin yung approval ng House of Representatives. And maybe you can make representations with the House of Representatives to conduct a hearing with regard to the pending bills of the Committee on National Defense. Anyway, welcome back, Senator Bato. Okay, we'll proceed now with the second agenda, the Defense Industry Act. Tama ba? Okay. Yung mga hindi nakasali dito sa second agenda, pwede nang can be excused. Kayo kasali pa, no? You're still involved here sa second bill, second agenda. Yung mga hindi na baka nagugutom na kayo, baka wala pa yata. May pagkain ba tayo rito? Unless gusto nyo makikain, okay lang. Okay? Doon na tayo sa Defense Industry Act. Meron na ba nag-submit ng position paper dito sa National Defense Security Act? National Defense Industry Act. Did we require? Nag-require na tayo? Okay, while awaiting for the ComSec, first question, This bill seeks to revive the Self-Reliant Defense Posture Program, which was initially implemented during the 1970s. Can the defense sector spread into the records of the committee the history and experience we had in implementing the said program? What are the major accomplishments achieved under the SRDP program? How different will this new and revitalized SRDP program be that will ensure its success this time around? Who can answer? Maybe DND can answer.
Mr. Chair, may we be allowed to include in our report, Mr. Chair, the accomplishments of the SRDP program since its
Alright.
establishment in 1970, Mr. Chair.
Okay. My second question, I think the Senate President has already discussed this with regard the procurement program. No? What is the current ratio of foreign against local procurement relative to our defense requirements? How heavily are we dependent on foreign supplies for our defense procurement? Are we really dependent?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, majority of our defense procurements, Mr. Chair, are government-to-government procurements.
Okay, is the current demand for defense supplies and material enough to sustain a self-reliant defense industry?
Sorry,
Ligaya?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
come again, Mr.
please. You want me to repeat the
Yes,
question?
Mr. Chair.
Is the current demand for defense supplies and material enough to sustain a self-reliant defense industry?
No, Mr. Chair.
And is it also true that the government arsenal is currently unable to provide greater than 10 to 20% of the AFP's annual ammunition needs due to chronic lack of raw materials and difficulties with the AFP procurement process?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The government arsenal is experiencing difficulties, Mr. Chair.
Because,
Because of all the equipment, Your Honor.
and because of the procurement process also,
Procurement
altogether.
process, Your Honor.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Senator.
since you have mentioned about the government arsenal. Kasi every budget hearing, yan ang paborito kong binabantayan palagi, yung improvement or whatever issues about government arsenal. Dahil napaka-crucial po niyan in our defense and security. Kaya yung sabi mo, cannot cope up with the demands or the requirements of the armed forces alone, yung ating arsenal, which is supposed to be, talagang dapat dyan tayo umaasa. Kasi local, atin talaga yan, Pagdating ng araw na kinakailangan natin yung bala, pag nagkagira sa buong mundo, wala tayong makukunan ng bala sa ibang bansa, kundi sa atin kung meron tayong sariling paggawaan. So yan palagi ang tinututukan ko. But apparently, Mr. Chair, over the years, napansin ko, para bang, ewan ko, DND itself or is not keen on improving the government arsenal. Dahil, alam nyo, sa buong Pilipinas, nakikita ko, Mr. Chair, sa buong Pilipinas, yun palang yung nagkakahirapan tayo magbili ng primer dahil nagsimula yung Ukraine War, ganun. Hirapan tayo bumili ng primer. Nalaman ko, sa buong Pilipinas, yung government arsenal lang pala natin ay ang merong machine na gumagawa ng primer. Sabi ni, ewan ko sir, sino bang ko ngayon? Sinong director ng government arsenal?
Jerry Amante.
Siya pa rin. Very good kung siya pa rin. Kasi doon na kami nag-start ng discussion namin, Mr. Chair. Tayo lang pala. Sa buong Pilipinas mayroong paggawaan ng primer. And it's very crucial, Mr. Chair. Even yung pinakamalaking kumpanya ng firearms industry dito sa Pilipinas, yung Arms Corps, wala silang paggawaan ng primer. Talaga nag-i-import pa sila ng primer. At tayo sa arsenal, meron pala. So sana masuportahan natin ito. At alam mo, yung Arms Corps nga, sabi niya, nag-uusap kami, pangarap nilang makabili ng ganong klaseng machine, and it require billions of pesos para sila makaproduce niyan. Tayo, meron na pala tayo. Bakit hindi natin kaya masupplyan yung ating, parang in the interest of convenience, sinasabi ng ating DND or ng armed forces nga, magkonte, bilhin na lang tayo dyan sa labas o kung anong meron. Instead of developing our own, out of convenience nga, diretso na. So dapat tutukan muna natin yan, yung ating government arsenal, Mr. Chair. Yun lang. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Bato, for giving us very important information. Yes, Asikti.
Mr. Chair, the Secretary recognizes the need to strengthen and modernize the government arsenal. In fact, Mr. Chair, he already instructed the Office of the Undersecretary for Acquisitions and Resource Management to study the matter of entering into partnerships and arrangements with other defense contractors, Mr. Chair.
At Mr. Chair, if I may add, no? Alam mo, panahon ni President Marcos noon, mga kadete pa kami, nagtutur kami dito sa Metro Manila. Hindi ko lang maalala kung anong mga lugar yon, pero mayroong paggawaan ng yung mga bala ng mortar, sir, di ba? May paggawaan ng mga bala ng M203, yung research and development, RDC component. Ewan ko, meron pa bang RDC ang DND ngayon, sir? Yun ang problema, nawala na yun. Kaya nga masabi natin, after Marcos, totally nag-decline talaga yung capability ng armed forces at ng military natin, yung defense natin, dahil nawala yung mga RDC. Meron tayong paggawa ng missile noon eh. Meron tayong paggawa ng mga mini-cruiser, sariling sasakyan ng military. Sayang, Mr. Chair, sana, yun nga, with this issue on self-reliance defense posture, dapat dandahan nating babalik towards that level during the Marcos era. Yun lang, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Naging problema kasi dito, maraming factors that deter the improvement of the government arsenal. Una-una yung Procurement Act natin. Yun ang problema. That's why I think dito sa National Defense Act, amendahan na lang natin because yung ating AFP or for any government agency for that matter cannot purchase or cannot acquire second hand. Hindi naman na tayo, yung DND or AFP, DND, hindi naman kaya bumili ng brand new. For example, aeroplano o helicopter or mga baril, sa sobrang mahal, hindi tayo maka-afford na makabili ng bago. So, sabi nga ni Senate President Zubiri kanina, meron nga sa US, meron yata silang dinidispose ng mga firefighter jets yata na second hand, na mura. Hindi naman sila pwede mag-acquire dahil second hand nga. So that's why we have to do something about it. We have to amend maybe the Procurement Act in order for us to avail of the sale from the United States, no? Yung mga murang equipments nila. Anyway, I understand it is only the NDCP who has submitted their position paper with regard to this SRDP bill or the National Defense Industry Act. Pwedeng, you haven't submitted, no?
We undertake to submit, Mr. Chair.
2 weeks? Pwede 2 weeks?
Yes, Mr.
para
Chair.
sabay-sabay na yung pati National Defense Act. No? Any other resource persons who wishes to
Mr. Chair.
give their inputs? Attorney Farolan?
Yes, from the Commissioner on Higher Education. Regarding this bill, it's just, we're just interested if there is a possibility of including a defense and security research agenda in the higher education sector, which would, of course, require appropriate funding. As you may observe in other jurisdictions, the collaboration between higher education institutions and the defense establishment is actually quite rich and has produced a lot of technological developments and even policy studies which are quite critical when it comes to both our soft and hard approach to our defense posturings. it could be one of those areas. So additional incentives, funding, and even research regulation, where we would be able to manage also the kinds of research that we produce so that it doesn't also fall into the wrong hands, and also allowing access to our higher education institutions, our scholars and researchers, inventors, innovators, and even those in the higher education and research field to have a better collaborative environment with the defense establishment. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Attorney Roland. Okay, thank you. We learned that the defense and military industrial economic zone will rise in Bataan, am I correct? Merong defense and military industrial economic zone na itatayo sa Limay, Bataan. Following the signing of MOA between the Authority of Freeport Area of Bataan and the government arsenal on the proposed declaration of the defense industrial estate in the province. Is this true? Am I correct? Or is this a misinformation?
We'll verify the information, Mr. Chair.
You're not aware of this?
We're not
Meron
aware,
ng meron ng MOA signing between the government arsenal and the Freeport area of Bataan. The Senate President has already mentioned this. You're not aware of it?
We are checking, Your Honor.
Anyway, these two bills that we have been discussing since this morning are very important bills that has to be discussed and deliberated further. And as soon as we receive all the position papers of all stakeholders concerned regarding these two very important bills, and I plan to pass these two bills before the year ends. Okay, and I hope to get all your support and cooperation with these two very interesting and very important bills that we have discussed. Okay, any other resource persons who wishes to speak with
Your
regard to
Honor.
the matter? Yes, Yusek.
Yes, I just want to reiterate what you emphasize, because these two bills are supportive of the Philippine Development Plan, particularly two major chapters of the Philippine Development Plan, the Chapter 13.1, Ensuring Peace and Security, and Chapter 8.2, Advancing Research and Development, Technology and Innovation. And these two bills are also in the legislative agenda of the Philippine Development Plan and also our commitments in the LEDAC. So again, we would like to, so we are supporting these bills. We have provided our detailed inputs for the national defense bills last May 11, 2023. And again, we will be providing our inputs for the DRP, PFIDA bills shortly, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Yusek Abad-Santos. What department are you representing?
I'm with the National Economic and Development
ANEDA.
Authority. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. What about the DTI? Meron na ba kayong position paper? You're going to submit your position paper with regard to the two bills that we are discussing right now.
Hi, sir. Good morning po. DTI is currently reviewing and finalizing the position in terms of these two bills po.
You're still reviewing it?
Yes po.
You haven't come up with a
Sir, there are multiple offices po that giving comments po regarding this one. And our office, the Strategic Trade Management Office, is just one of the office who have
when
already
can you
submitted.
submit your position paper?
Sir, we will consult then po with BTIPR. But,
2 weeks, pwede?
Yes po, sir.
2 weeks?
Noted po.
Kaya
Yes
na?
po. Ipa-pressure natin. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, for the BOI,
B?
investments,
Okay.
it's going to be the same. We're going to submit our position paper.
Within
But
2
it's
weeks.
the DTI that consolidates all these position
Yes,
papers
please.
for the DTI.
Thank you very much. All right. Yeah.
Mr.
Yusek.
Chair, regarding the defense industrial economic zone in Limay, there is no MOU yet.
There is no.
Yeah. Pero check mo na
Merong press release ang Philippine News Agency. Defense and military industrial economic zone will soon rise in this province to encourage investors in defense projects to establish their manufacturing plants in the country. The authority of the Freeport area of Bataan, or the AFAB, and the government arsenal signed on Monday a memorandum of agreement on the proposed declaration of the defense industrial estate here as the newest expansion area of the Freeport area of Bataan. I think the Senate President mentioned this earlier when he was here. Ba't hindi nyo alam? This was, itong, ano to, June 28 last year. 2022 pa.
Mr. Chair, we were not aware. It's 2022, Mr. Chair, June 27, 2022. We were not there yet, Mr. Chair. We're not aware. But among the things, Mr. Chair, is we are currently considering, it's already included, Mr. Chair, in the SRDP roadmap, the Defense Industrial Complex in Limay, Bataan.
So, no one of you are aware of the signing of the MOA between Bataan and the government arsenal?
Mr. Chair, I'm not personally aware, Mr. Chair, but it's included in the Defense Industrial Complex in Limay, Bataan is incled in the...
Please check your facts naman.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, before that, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Amy Marcos. Senator Manang Amy.
Apologies to the chairman and to the rest of you as presiding over a meeting in the other room. I hope you're still talking about the SRDP. Am I still on time?
We are currently discussing about it, Senator Marcos.
Yes, I am in receipt of the other versions of the bill, but having consulted with so many of our commanders in all the different areas from NOLCOM to WESTCOM to SouthCom, WestMincom, EastMincom, and the rest, I would simply like to add a few things that they requested, on the ground, and these are the guys who are fighting for us. Unang-una, ang sabi po, kung maaari, imbes na USEC lamang ng defense technology sa DND, kung maaari magkaroon ng SRDP Council. Sa panahon ngayon na Ilocano ang ating Pangulo at namamayagpag ang mga nagtitipid, talagang ayaw natin na magtatag ng bagong konseho. Ganun pa man, mukhang mahalaga na magkaganito dahil if the Council shall be the policy-making body to oversee the implementation of an SRDP program, it will be chaired necessarily by the SND, but must be composed of the DFA, the DOF, the DOST, DBM, NEDA, DOH, and DICT, given the myriad tasks already assigned to the AFP, particularly in times of calamities and disasters. Also, in view of the new external threats that have pushed us out of a solely internal viewpoint. There's a secretariat, there's an executive committee, there's a formal program, and that should include defense as well as disaster response, since we're all reliant upon the AFP to do this work. Further, aside from this, we have indicated that it will be better and easier to monitor as well the private entities. I refer to the defense manufacturers in the SRDP program. It will be easier to monitor the financial incentives for R&D and so on. They will be getting tax incentives. They will not be under the FIRB. So they need to be monitored by someone else. So there was a sense that the USEC would have too much on his plate and would require some help from the DOF, BOI, and PEZA, and so on. Also, I wanted to state that at least 50% of the defense-related material under the SRDP should be those required under the AFP modernization program. We are well aware that we are far behind on Horizon 2 and 3, and there's some work left over from Horizon 1 even. So critical components should be procured under the AFP program. Unahin na natin yung modernization na nagiging himala na lamang. Dinagdag ko rin na yung modernization ng government arsenal and Philippine Aerospace Development Corporation, both places to which I've been, and nakakaawa po yung itsura nila. Napakagagaling ng ating mga engineers sa Army, kaya lang talaga na lang buko-buko na lang ang kanilang trabaho. Hirap na talaga sila at ang luluma ng kasangkapan. And this would likewise require the SRDP program to provide material, equipment, and vehicles necessary to effectively respond to disasters and public health emergencies, such as the COVID-19, which will not be the last. And finally, and this I have heard repeatedly by everyone in almost every single command, the deletion of the requirement in Section 4B of RA 7898 that major equipment and weapon systems shall be purchased by the AFP must be used by the armed forces of the country of origin or the armed forces of at least 2 countries. Alam na natin na ang nangyari sa ating mga baril, marami namang napoproduce dito sa Pilipinas, pero dahil sa requirement na ito, namimili tayo sa Korea imbes na bumili ng baril dito na gawang Pilipino. They are pre-disqualified, and it's entirely wrong to pre-disqualify our local manufacturers, to my mind. Thank you. Lastly, and I believe this is an area where we used to be much more active, and that is a special lane in the Intellectual Property Office to handle the applications of patents and other industrial designs of the AFP. You can also derive some income when these patents, for example, are demilitarized and open for commercial production. And in the time of export, the AFP and the SND could actually create a new revenue stream with these patents and industrial design copyrights. Hindi pa ginagawa ngayon. Dati-rati, ang dalas-dalas ninyo mag-copyright sa military establishment. Ngayon, wala na, at higit sa lahat, wala pang kinikita. So, maybe that's an area that we need to exploit. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, the blooming Senator, Senator Marcos. Oh, may I know your comments on the opening statement of Senator Amy?
Noted po lahat.
Noted.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
What about the AFP? Hindi pa natin narinig yung Armed Forces of the Philippines simula kanina.
To the Chairman, sir, pleasant morning, and to the attendees of this hearing. Sir, with regards to the part of the AAP, we really appreciate and we are very privileged to have that position of the beloved senators regarding the SRDP program. We have here the Senate Bill number 315 as by the Senator Zubiri, the Senate Bill number 505 by Senator Revilla, Senate Bill 2046 by Senator Marcos Mam, and of course the Senate Bill 682 by Senator Estrada, sir. Sir, with regards to that, it is a great help for us if we are going to really push through with the SRDP program, citing these circumstances on our part in the AAP, sir. With regards to the AAP modernization, we believe that it is a very tedious process wherein we are reaching 635 days in the implementation of our AP modernization project. And with regards to the statements earlier, that there will be basically a probability of proposing the exemption of the AP with the procurement process, particularly the AP modernization, I believe it would be a great help for us to really, procure and eventually support our modernization program. And aside from that, sir, in the implementation of the SRDP program, we would just like to have this proposal that there will also be a continuity of these our MICA projects in terms of AP modernization. Pending the SRDP program, maybe we will still continue procuring from our foreign counterparts. Of course, also, I think we really have to take the SRDP program as part of a security strategy, not just a program per se, but since will also be affecting our economic, that's why we have here the other departments. It should be a national government approach, sir, I think, to the Mr. Chair, since we have here the NEDA, the DTI, and the other agencies that will be very of great help also in the pursuit of this SRDP, the participation of the other departments. And it's also for our local industries also, preferential attention also for the local industries for the procurement of our essential equipments. And of course, sir, lastly, I would just like to reiterate the thing, particularly the simplification of our procurement process. And I think, sir, on the part of the AP, that would be all.
Yes, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I'd like to react,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. And again and again, I heard two things. One was the deletion, as stated, of the requirement of two states or two governments or two armed forces using the same. We're fully aware that the Philippines, long ago, was actually producing, through Presidential Decree 415, armaments such as the M16 assault rifles, pistols, the 45s, were being produced here in the Philippines, 81mm mortar tubes, gun barrels, ammunition like 5.56mm ammunition, hand grenades, MK2, the 81 mortar ammunition. We were able to produce vehicles like the Jiffy Jeeps. I think everyone remembers the Mini Cruiser. We all learned to drive on those little things. We had also for the Navy hovercraft speedboats, Marcelo boats, PCF, LCVP, whale boats. Lahat yan nawala na. At para tayong binabaril natin ang sarili natin dahil nga rin-require natin na ginamit na ng dalawang nakaraang sandatahang lakas. Ikalawa, ayaw pa natin iligtas sila sa procurement law. Natatawa nga yung mga Israeli sa atin, sabi, dapat top secret yan. Bakit lahat ng acquisition nasa lahat ng dyaryo sa buong Pilipinas? Anong kalokohan na security yan? So paulit-ulit po yun na kung maaari may limited supervision lamang sa procurement at visitorial powers. Pero wag naman pilitin yung mga publication and other requirements sa procurement law. So isa yon at yung isa nga na wag naman pinapatay yung ating mga local manufacturers. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Amy. I would like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Raffy Tulfo. Senator Raffy, we want to give an opening
Good afternoon.
statement before we adjourn.
Sorry, late ako, Mr. Chair. Galing ako dun sa isang... Meron lang kasi ako isang concern at katanungan. Yung sa Section 10 ng proposed law, tinatanggal ata dito, if I'm not mistaken. Yung sa procurement na yung single largest completed contract. Na, is that, am I right? Na
Yes, yes,
pinatatanggal?
The reason behind this, if
Ano pong safeguard meron para...
kasi ang kanina nandito si Senate President Mix, ang problema kasi niyan, if we don't exempt itong AFP from this Procurement Act, hindi sila makabili. We cannot afford, or they cannot afford to buy brand new equipments. Okay. For example, like, ano ba sinabi ni Senate President, yung F-16. Hindi naman nila kayang bumili. Meron nga nag-offer ang United States government na didispose na nila yung kanilang F-16. in a much cheaper price, although slightly used o second hand na tinatawag, hindi naman sila makabili ng second hand because bawal sa atin na mag-purchase o mag-acquire ng second hand equipments. So yun ang naging basihan. We cannot purchase, or not only the AFP, not only the DND, all government agencies concerned, kahit LGUs, they cannot buy second-hand equipments or other products. So, kaya yun ang one of the basis for exempting the DND or the AFP from this Procurement Act.
Okay. Pero ano naman po yung safeguard meron tayo para hindi ho makapasok yung mga fly-by-night na mga contractor?
We can discuss this in the TWG to have the safety nets implemented. No?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yun lang muna for now. May kinig lang muna ako. Baka meron ako mga...
Actually, patapos na tayo. Senator
patapos na ba?
Rafi.
Okay.
If you have
Sige.
your questions, we can give you this opportunity, Senator Rafi.
Sige. Wala na po akong question kasi late ako dumating. So, hindi ko narinig yung proceedings because galing po ako dun sa barangay mga health workers which isa po ako sa proponent ng bill nila. But anyway, magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Ladies and gentlemen, napakaganda sana itong usapin to kung nakaabot lang sana ako ng maaga-aga. But anyway, gusto ko lang parating na suportado ko po ang ating AFP. Lahat ng ating kasundaluhan dahil po sa inyong pong sa inyo na nagbibigay proteksyon sa ating bayan. And I can assure you with my all out support sa ating mga militar. Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for your kind words, Senator Rafi. At this juncture, this committee will create a TWG or Technical Working Group on the two bills to further discuss the fine details of the measure. And I expect and I hope that the stakeholders concerned will be able to submit their respective position papers on these two bills that we have discussed this morning.
Mr. Chair, meron ba akong tanungan?
Yeah.
Medyo, I don't know if off-topic to. Yung pinaka-recent, nakita ko sa group chat natin na itong Chinese Coast Guard na naman, inisprehan ng tubig, binomba ng tubig yung ating Coast Guard din.
Coast Guard.
Ano pong reaksyon ng ating military tungkol dito, ng ating taga-Department of National Defense? Parang paulit-ulit na lang po to at sobra ng pang-api at pang-abuso ginagawa sa atin ng China. Any reaction from the AFP and from the DND?
Maybe the AFP is just beside you, Senator
dito pala.
Rafi.
Yeah. Kasi nakita ko yung video, na-high blood po ako. Grabe po yun. Nagdi-deliver lang po ng supply, nire-supply lang po natin Philippine Coast Guard. Yung pong mga sundalo natin o nakabase sa isang lugar doon sa pinag-contest na territory, binomba po ng tubig nitong mga Coast Guard ng China. Meron na ho bang Chinese Coast Guard? Binomba po yung ating Philippine Coast Guard. May reaction na ho ba yung DND tungkol doon? Nakapag-issue na ba, Mr. Chair, yung ating DND? Did they issue any statement? I haven't read it.
Asikdi?
Mr. Chair, the AFP last Saturday issued a statement of condemnation, Mr. Chair, condemning the excessive and unlawful actions against the Philippine Coast Guard, Mr. Chair. The DND shares the same position, Mr. Chair.
Hanggang condemnation na lang tayo, Senator.
Oo nga. Wala tayong kakayahan kasing lumaban.
Hanggang mag-file tayo ng diplomatic protest that is always falling in deaf ears.
Ipasa Diyos na lang natin siguro, Mr. Chair. Magdasal, mag-pray na lang tayo na sana one of these days, maawang Panginoon at hindi na maulit yun. Anyway, aside from condemnation from the DND, wala ho kayong ginagawang pakikiusap sa inyong counterparts sa China para sabihin sa kanila, hey, this is too much. Diba? Or siguro next time, I don't know, ayoko lang magkaroon tayo ng confrontation between China and the Philippines, Philippine military and the Chinese military. Alam ko naman parang elepante at langgam lang tayo, elepante sila. Pero is it possible na kapag nag-resupply yung ating Philippine Coast Guard ng mga pagkain sa mga katropa natin, escortan po ng ating Philippine Navy? Would that help? Para maging kahit pa paano mapigilan itong Philippine Coast Guard na apihin yung itong Chinese Coast Guard, apihin yung ating Philippine Coast Guard. Kung meron silang escort na taga-Philippine Navy.
Your Honor, Your Chair, actually every time we make the RORE or the resupply to our troops in Ayungin, the boats, the civilian boats we use are escorted by the Coast Guard and then the Philippine Navy. Every time we do that.
So yung nangyaring pong yun, meron pong escort po yung Philippine Coast Guard.
Yes.
Escort na po yun. Tapos kaya,
Escort.
oh.
Yes, sir. And aside from that, aside from the strong condemnation, actually the counterpart, our DAFA in China is also sending aggressive message against the people in China of the illegal actions of the Chinese Coast Guard. Sa level po nila, meron tayong very strong statements against the illegal act of the Chinese Coast Guards. And aside from that, the diplomatic protest is always being carried out by, of course, DFA, fully supported by the Department of Defense.
I'm sure kayo po ay nakikipag-usap na sa inyong counterpart sa Chinese government. Ano usually po ang binibigyan nilang reason kung bakit nila nagawa yun, nagawa ng kanilang mga tauhan yun?
Actually po, sir, it is the Department of Foreign Affairs doing the dialogue with the Chinese.
Okay. Do you have any representative from the Department of Foreign Affairs? Yes. You may answer the question of Senator Rafi.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Senators. Gusto ko lang pong ipaalam na yung Department of Foreign Affairs po kasama ng National Task Force on the West Philippine Sea. Meron ho tayong interagency task force. Meron hong importanteng press briefing na igaganap today, this afternoon. At yung ating National Security Advisor ho na siyang chair ay magbibigay ho ng statement to clarify ano ho yung nangyari at kung ano ho yung ating ginagawa ngayon. So I would not like ho to preempt what the National Security Advisor will be saying this afternoon. But we would just like to reassure the body that sa DFA and the other members of the National Task Force are fully aware of the reports and the circumstances that have happened. And we share the concerns of our armed forces of the Philippines and the PCG who were directly affected by the incident. And we also, more importantly, the service personnel affected. Yung DFA ho, we are undertaking all diplomatic measures with regards to this incident, and we will provide, it's ongoing ho ngayon, Senator, both in our embassy in Beijing and here in the DFA. We are coordinating ho with our relevant counterparts, and we will provide updates ho, this afternoon on what has been done so far.
Ang tinatanong kasi ni Senator Rafi, because of the repeated Chinese incursions within our territory, nakapag-dialogo na ba kayo sa inyong Chinese counterparts before? No, at kung ano ba ang sinasabi ng inyong Chinese counterparts during your dialogues? Kasi madalas na itong nagkakaroon ng Chinese incursions.
The Philippines, we reiterate our position na the features that are in the West Philippine Sea are one, they are part of our, they fall under, we have sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction over these features.
Hindi niyo ba sinasabi sa China, oy, lumayas na kayo dyan, huwag na kayo makialam dito
Sir,
sa...
we convey ho the position na these are sa atin po to, no? And of course, the Chinese will convey their position na they will convey that they also have their rights and jurisdiction. So we at every opportunity ho, we reassert and reemphasize po our sovereignty, sovereign rights, and jurisdiction.
Senator Rafi.
Okay na ako doon, Mr. Chair, thank you. Meron lang inabot sa akin note sa mga staff ko, nga naalala ko, meron lang po ang katanungan dito ngayon. Kasi noong 2022, the Philippine government canceled a 12 billion peso contract, yung purchase ng 16 Russian-made helicopters, dahil nga po doon sa naging issue sa Russia and Ukraine. Now, meron pa tayo, dapat tayong recover na down payment na ibigay natin down payment doon sa mga nasabing helicopter na 1.9 billion pesos. Is there a way na ma-recoup pa natin yun, mababawi? Ano pong status ng down payment na yun? Mababawi pa ba yun or sa kanila na lang yung perang yun? And then, how will our proposed bills prevent future incidents like this? Yung 1.9 billion po, ano na pong status noon? Yung naibigay na po doon sa Russia para sa mga helicopters dapat nila. Sayang din po yun, malaking pera din po yung 1.9 billion. Marami rin pong pwedeng mapaglaanan yung pondong yun sana kung mababawi. 1.9 billion pesos po. Pesos.
Your Honor, we are currently exploring all our options on how we can recoup the 1.9 billion pesos advance payment po ito. 15% po ito ng total contract involving the 16 MI-17 helicopters po. Sa ngayon po, ni-refer na din po namin yung matter sa OSG for further study kasi po andyan po yung posibilidad na magkakasuhan po kung sakasakali po i-terminate natin. Kasi po sinimulan na po natin yung proseso kung paano po natin i-terminate yung buong kontrata.
So, ano po ang binibigyan na reason ng the other side sa Russia kung bakit po nagmamatigas sila at nilang basta ibigyan na lamang yung 1.9 billion pesos samantalang hindi naman sila kapag-deliver?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, ang isa po sa mga rason na ibinibigay po nila is kasi po may mga naggawa na po sila. Ongoing production na po. Actually, Your Honor, it was only in September that we were able to convey the suspension of works. Yung September lang po natin sila napatigil sa pagbuo ng mga helicopter, Mr. Chair.
Okay. So ano po mga measures na ginagawa natin in place kung meron man na para hindi na maulit itong ganitong klaseng insidente? Na kung saan nag-advance payment tayo and then of course all of a sudden mag-withdraw tayo and then hindi natin mababaw yung pera. Are there some measures, Mr. Chair, na ma-prevent na itong ganitong klaseng sitwasyon?
Siguro you can provide that in the contract between the Philippine government and the other government concerned. Wala ba sa kontrata yun? Just in case, katulad nga, biglang nag-cancel ng purchase itong Philippine government. Wala tayong safety net, wala tayong habol.
Mr.
Kasi
Chair,
sasabihin lang talaga ng Russia na, hindi, ginagawa na namin. Kahit hindi ginagawa, hindi naman natin alam. Hindi naman natin malalaman kung talagang ginagawa na nila. Di ba? We have no
Kahit na ginawa na nila, Mr. Chair, pwede naman nila ibenta yun sa iba. O pwede lang gamitin sa sarili nila.
We have no knowledge kung talagang nagsisinungaling sila o nagsasabi sila ng totoo, kung talagang ginagawa na nila yung helicopter. So, lugi talaga yung Pilipinas. So, we have to have safety nets under the contract between the Philippine government and the Russian government. Meron bang provision dun sa contract na yan? Ano ba nakasaad sa contract? Because I am not privy to it.
Yes, Mr. Chair, meron naman po. In fact, Mr. Chair, it was the Philippine government who terminated the contract, Mr. Chair. Now, Mr. Chair, when we terminate it, we invoke the termination for convenience na hindi na po siya feasible. Hindi na po feasible implementa yung kontrata sa ngayon, sir. Mr. Chair. Now, there's also this principle of quantum meruit. Yung sinasabi po nila na kung ano na po yung nagawa, maaari po nating makuha na. So, yun nga po, as mentioned in...
Meron bang representative sa inyo na pumunta sa Russia para tingnan kung talaga may ginagawa? At kung meron totoo naman, meron silang ginagawa na, naumpisa na, pwede naman natin kunin.
Sa ngayon po, Mr. Chair, wala pa pong...
Mr. Chair, siguro yung sinasabi niya, kung ano yung nabayaran, yun ang pwedeng kunin. So,
Yes.
Yung mga LEC lang kukunin mo.
Actually, Your Honor, meron na po silang mga pinadalang litrato na nagawa na po nila. In fact, prior to the assumption of Secretary Teodoro, Mr. Chair, then OIC Galvez approved a trip to Russia to inspect kung ano nga po ba talaga yung nagawa na.
So what happened to that inspection? Sabi niyo, may pumunta si Secretary Galvez sa China, sa Russia, kung ano na talaga nagawa. So ano po yung mga nagawa na base doon sa ginawa nila inspection?
Your Honor, hindi pa po na tutuloy yung trip to Russia. Ano pa lang po yun? Inaprubahan pa lang po ni Secretary Galvez during that time.
So wala nung kayong balak na pumunta doon para tingnan kung ano talaga yung nagawa na. Para kung sakali man nagawa na, di pwede na natin kunin yung mga helicopter para hindi natin magpahirapan pa kapalit nung sa advance payment para makwits na lang.
Well noted, Your Honor, that we'll consult with the Honorable Secretary.
Magkano binayad natin sa 1.9 billion? Magkano isang helicopter na supposedly gagawin nila? Do you have any ballpark figure that you can relate to us?
Around 800, more or less.
800
million.
800 million
Ang isang helicopter?
pesos.
Pesos.
Isang helicopter.
Yes. Kasi po, Mr. Chair, the whole contract is around 12 billion. And it involves
kung 800
16.
million at 1.9 billion yung binayad natin, pwede tayong dalawang helicopter na ayos.
Yes. At teka lang, bakit napakamahal po? 800 million? Anong klaseng helicopter po ito?
Heavy lift. Heavy lift.
Okay. Okay.
60-seater, Antonov? MI? 60-seater?
Ano to? Assault helicopter?
Yung
Transport.
It's geared towards HADR po, yung Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief, supposedly.
Okay. So, tama si Senator Jinggoy, kung 1.9 ang in-advance natin, 800 ang bawat isa na helicopter na binibenta ng Russia. So, pwede tayo makakuha ng dalawa. Humila na lang tayo ng dalawang helicopter na doon na nagawa na. Para medyo mabawasan naman
Is that feasible? Is that possible?
Mr. Chair, the department is currently exerting all efforts, Mr. Chair.
Okay, sabi niyo po, nasa korte arbitration. Anong korte po ito?
Wala pa po siya. Should we decide to formally terminate the contract, ang pag-uusapan po dito is
So, hindi pa terminated yung contract?
We conveyed the
Kasi sabi niyo
termination
kanina,
na po.
Sec, nasa korte na yung pagkaintindi ko. So, wala pa pala sa korte.
Pinag-aaralan pa lang po in the event na dumating po tayo.
Pag-aaralan. So, kailan po natin matatapos yung pag-aaral?
Kasi po, Your Honor, we are exerting all efforts to reach an amicable settlement. Kasi po, kung sakali pong dumating po tayo sa arbitration, gastos din po, karagdagang gastos din po yun on our end.
Pero ano pong pinaka-status? Ano pong sinasabi nila? Are they cooperative? Are they okay ba sa kanila na later on, igugo na lang nila yung i-release yung ilang mga helicopters ang nagawa nila para mabawas doon sa down payment natin? O nagmamatigas sasabihin nila hindi na pwede, kayo ang umatras, kung ano pa mga reason nila. Dahil kung ganon, lugi po tayo ng 1.9. Kasi sabi mo nasa korte na, wala pa pala sa korte. So kailan kayo makapagbigay sa amin ng definite time na para malaman natin yung tunay na estado ng 1.9 billion in terms of yung pera na yun ay mababalik na sa atin?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, sa ngayon po, tuloy-tuloy po yung consultations between the Russian counterpart and the DND.
Okay, so far po, may nabubunga na ho ba yung consultation na yun?
Mr. Chair, Your Honor, so as not to preempt the conduct of ongoing consultations, Mr. Chair, may we be allowed to brief the honorable senators in an executive session? Kung maaari po sana.
Why not?
Mr. Chair, hindi lang niya masabi kung ginamit na sa Ukraine, hindi wala na tayong makakuha ron.
Pero, Mr. Asek Eric, may pag-asa pa ba? Kasi matagal na ito eh. May pag-asa pa ba mo ba yung pera? Or mukhang malabo na kailangan magkorte pa? Kasi kung abuti naman ang siyam-siyam at wala pa rin talaga nangyari, it's better na, sabi ng kanina Senator Jingo, isang ayon talaga ako doon, maghila na lang tayo ng 2 helicopter nila, nagawa na. Para quits. Is that something na pwedeng, naka-include ba yun sa contract? O kung wala man sa contract, pwede ba yung parang pag-uusap na lang between two countries para mabawi man lang yung perang nawala sa atin? Or 1.9 billion na mukhang mawawala na kung hindi tayo gagawa ng anumang hakbang?
Your Honor, Your Chair, we can probably give you a clearer answer in a executive session.
Okay.
Thank
I
you,
respect
sir.
that.
Maybe in the next hearing, we'll... Senator Francis?
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Rafi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just apologize for being late. Kanina nandito ako. I attended a meeting with Lieutenant Colonel Tammy Duckworth. Tammy Duckworth is now the incumbent senator from Illinois. She is a member of the Armed Services Committee of the U.S. Senate. Tatapos lang po doon sa 6th floor. A lot of issues were discussed concerning a relationship with the United States, among others. But, Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask a specific question which has been lingering on my mind for the last several weeks. And perhaps the DND officers here can answer me. Since 2008, as we speak now, meron tayong 2 kadete na nasa U.S. Naval Academy sa Annapolis. Pilipino. Meron akong dating tao, nandun naman ngayon sa Fort Rucker, Alabama, training. Since 2008, nag-stop na tayo tumanggap ng counterpart cadets from the United States going to the Philippine Military Academy. You can confirm this later. Nagtataka ako, tuwing meron tayong, Mr. Chairman, tuwing meron tayong Commission on Appointments hearing, yung binabasa kong mga kapal na folder, ang dami tayong mga military officers, O6, even majors, nang dumaan sila, graduate ng Beijing Military Academy. Nag-aral sa China, PLA Military Academy. Can you confirm this? We have stopped accepting cadets from the United States since 2008. Now we're sending our cadets, PMA graduates or cadets, to the Beijing Military Academy. Ano pong dahilan nito? Tinigil natin yung ating pagtanggap ng kadete galing Amerika. Nagpapadala tayo ng kadete sa US Air Force Academy, US Naval Academy sa Annapolis, sa West Point. Subalit hindi tayo tumatanggap ng kadete galing sa Amerika, nagpapadala naman tayo ng kadete sa Beijing Military Academy sa China. Ano hong rationale nito? Hindi ko lang tinatanong pag may Commission on Appointments hearing, pero nakikita ko doon sa mga biodata, graduate ng Beijing. Paano nangyari to? Can somebody explain this? Doon tayo sa may treaty at ally natin, hindi tayo tumatanggap. Yung naghaharas sa atin sa West Philippine Sea, pinapadala naman natin yung mga kadete natin galing PMA. Can somebody explain the rationale behind this? Kanina hindi ko na ni-raise alam mo, si Senator Tommy Duckworth, putol yung dalawang paa niya, na RPG yan sa Iraq. Helicopter pilot yan ng Iraq War. Senator from Illinois, kaalis lang ng building na to. So, can somebody explain this na paano nag-stop tayo noong 2008 tapos nagpapadala naman tayo sa Beijing Military Academy? DND?
Sir, Your Honor.
Is that correct? Background information that I got?
I think so, Your Honor.
What do you mean you think so? Tama.
Right, Your Honor.
Wala na tayong tinatanggap na, kasi nung araw, may mga general serving the U.S. Army, graduate ng PMA.
Yes, sir.
Merong mga admirals, commodores, graduate ng Philippine Military Academy. Nag-aaral dito. Tayo naman, di ba, ang dami na napag-graduate natin sa Annapolis, sa West Point, etc., etc. Pero ngayon, pinapag-graduate natin sa Beijing Military Academy. Tama yun?
Your Chair, before I retired from the service, I was superintendent of PMA. And I asked that question also. Why U.S. is stopped sending cadets to
When did you
PMA.
retire, sir?
2013, sir.
2013. Wala pa si Rohen. Wala pa, hindi pa siya doon sa PMA. Hindi pa.
Kailan lang po? 89, sir.
Okay. Sige. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. And they said the U.S. stopped sending cadets to us. But other countries like Singapore, they continue to send cadets to PMA. Also Malaysia, they sent cadets to PMA. But I think recently, they're no longer sending cadets.
There must be a reason. So, because of that, I need another reason why you are now sending cadets to the Beijing Military Academy. Interoperable ba yung natin, yung doctrine natin doon sa trade doc na pasok sa Chinese military doctrine? So, paano yan? Naguguluhan ako doon. Simulang magpadala sa Beijing Military Academy ng cadets. Baka
Your Honor,
Chinese na yung salita. Pagbalik dito.
We will check and we will ask.
But is that true? Is that correct? May mga kadete tayo. As we speak now.
I heard about it, Your Honor.
So, meron tayong magiging mga general na graduate ng Beijing. Di ba? Meron. Tapos, at the same time, meron din tayong mga pinadadala sa tuloy-tuloy, sa Annapolis, tuloy-tuloy. Tumigil naman tayo. Can you provide this committee, there must be a reason why they stop sending cadets coming from the United States. Can you provide this, may hearing pa naman to, Mr. Chairman, can you provide this committee a concrete, black and white reason why they stop? There must be a reason. Hindi naman dahil walang visa yun. There must be a reason. And then can you provide this committee a reason why we started sending cadets to the Beijing military? I don't know if that's the correct name for that military institution.
We will do that.
Are we requiring them or encouraging our cadets to study at the Beijing Military Academy?
I have
Because
no idea.
I think this is quite alarming, no? And this is the first time I heard the news coming from Senator Tolentino. Are we encouraging them to study in the Military Academy of Beijing?
Your Honor, I cannot answer that. I have to find out the reason why they are sending cadets to China.
Who is in
We
charge?
will,
Who is in charge this? J9? Sino in charge?
No, J8, Your
J8,
Honor.
J8.
J8, Your Honor.
So may allowance yun. May allowance din yun sa Chinese government.
I'm sure, yes,
May
sir.
allowance yun. May billeting, lodging, accommodation yun. May patch yun pag graduate ka ng ano. And you must learn likewise to sing the national anthem, People's Republic of China. Alarming, indeed. Mr. Chairman, sa Cebuano, salita doon, nalipong, nahilo. So I think this has to be explained. This has to be explained. A lot of our young, we are promoting ROTC. We're about to revive ROTC. Yung pala, meron tayong pinapadala naman doon sa, magulo to, Mr. Chairman. They're not there to, not just to learn Chinese culinary and even use chopsticks. Di ba? Iba yung doktrina siguro doon. I just raised that, Mr. Chairman, for the information of this committee.
Thank you for providing this vital information, and I'm as surprised as you are, because I don't think, or I don't know if the Defense Department or the AFP are
Mr. Chair.
encouraging our cadets to study. Yes.
Because I read an article, that's part of what we call Chinese promoting influence globally. Nandiyan yung sa entertainment. Kung mapansin mo, may mga pelikulang American na may Chinese influence. Nandiyan yung sa education. At sa ngayon, military. Nandiyan pa yung BRI, yung Belt Road Initiative. Ayan na, nakikita na natin very clearly na talagang kumakalat na yung influence ng China. So itong na masakit po, itong muti nga, sinabi to ni Senator Tolentino, na pati yung military natin, may infiltrate na nila sa pamagitan ng pagbibigyan ng free education sa mga generals natin. And then, what happens after mag-graduate yung mga generals dyan, may utang na loob sa China at doon sila natuto about Chinese influence and Chinese cultures. Baka na mga bandang huli, makalimutan na magkanta ng Bayang Magilyo at ang alam na yung national anthem ng China. This is very alarming. So, my question to Yusek Espino, alam niyo na po pala, bakit hindi niyo po pinatitigil? This has to stop.
Your Honor, Your Chair, I was...
Sorry po, makasing pa. Sampal po to sa atin, binubuli po tayo ng China, and yet yung ating mga military natin walang magawa. Tapos ngayon, yung mga military natin na hindi kayang harapin ang China para sabihin stop, pinapadala natin doon sa China para mag-aral. So parang sampal po sa atin to, Yusek, sir.
I agree, totally agree, Your Honor. I was given a note a while ago. Only CGSC and MNSA counterparts were availed of by officers of the armed forces. I have to check if there are cadets sent to China Academy.
So,
wala pa pong confirmation. GSC counterparts and
so mga Lieutenant
MNSA.
Colonel to,
Lieutenant Colonel.
punta sa China.
Yes,
So totoo,
Your Honor.
di ba?
Yes,
Whether
Your Honor.
cadets or
But
mas
cadets-
mataas to, ano na to?
Yes, sir. For senior officers.
Hindi naman siguro 1 week lang to, di ba? Visiting
normal-
the Great Wall, visiting other
Normally,
sites.
1 year course, sir.
1
CGSC
year.
is 1 year course.
Alam niyo po, Mr. Chair, hindi sa pagyabang, I won't mention who the Chief of Staff then was. Nung battalion commander po ako sa reserve, may parada sa Aguinaldo. Ako yung maglilid sa parade. Sabi, baguhin niyo yung steps niyo. Ang pinagawa sa akin noon, yung goose steps. Sabi ko, saan natin nakuha ito? Sa China. Yung matataas, sir, yung hakbang. Ginaya natin yun, di ba? Nag-goose steps tayo. Ilang years tayo nag-goose steps. Ang hirap, no? Sumakit yung bewang ko.
Yes, sir. That was during the time of the late
Wag
Senate.
na ba? Kaibigan natin yun, no? So again, yung mga influence na ganito, hindi natin maalis eh. Nagmamarcha naman tayo. God bless his soul. Nagmamarcha naman tayo ng maayos. Pero ginaya natin yung marcha ng China. Yung dahan-dahan na matataas na gano'n.
Paano yung mga pandak?
Alin po?
Paano makakalukso yung mga pandak?
Naku, nahirapan lahat. So, sir, I just raised this point. So, para yung increment. But we need the report for the committee. The reasons for the two. Bakit nag-stop yung US cadets sa PMA? Bakit tayo nagpapadala? Exchange ba to? Do we have MNSA JSC Chinese counterparts attending?
That was the note given to me, sir. Yes,
Meron uma-attend sa atin.
Yes, sir.
So may access din sila sa grounds and records natin. That has to be re-evaluated. So nakatira din sila sa Aguinaldo?
As of now, sir, wala po akong alam na Chinese nag-undergo ng
GSC.
MNSA.
Okay.
May I suggest, Mr. Chair, Senator Trentino, with your indulgence, na siguro itigil na muna natin any dealings dito sa China in terms of military exchange, especially the fact na meron nangyaring sigalot between China and the Philippines at yung pambubuli ng Chinese sa military sa ating mga militar dito. So wag muna kasi kung ipagpapatuloy natin yan, yung mga military natin, Lieutenant Colonel, papadala sa Beijing Military Academy, parang insulto po yun. Can we put a stop to it? Put a break right away? Marami pa namang ibang academy na pwedeng padalhan. Bakit sa Beijing pa na kung saan they're perceived as enemies just because they've been bullying us for a long, long time?
Yes, Your Honor, I will go to inform the SND about it.
Third question, with the permission of the chair. It's not just the armed forces of the Philippines, but the Philippine National Police as well. They're sending cadets to Beijing. Can you confirm that?
The representative from the Philippine National Police here? I don't think.
But I also learned. You can verify from your counterparts. Yun lamang po, Mr. Chairman, at salamat
Thank you.
po sa pagkakataon.
Can you please provide us with a comprehensive report about what Senator Tolentino provided us with this vital information? Because I, as chairman, find it very, very alarming that we are sending or we are encouraging or whatever cadets or even our high officers to Beijing. Please provide us with a comprehensive result. Within
Yes,
a week?
Your Honor.
Pwede ba within a week?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Yes, Yusek Mapago.
Mr. Chairman, kasi po na last na lamang po, baka ko makalimutan.
Okay.
Directed to sa DND, meron ho ba tayo mga computer, hardware na made in China sa military? Meron po kasi ako narinig at one time, bumili daw po yung ating militar na mga computer parts, mga laptop computers dahil mura from China. Is that true?
I have no idea, no report regarding that, Your Honor.
Can you start checking po?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rafi. Yusek Mapago?
Mr. Chair, Your Honors, thank you for this opportunity. Idadagdag ko lang po, hindi lang po military pinapadala sa China. May mga nag-aaral po doon, mga postgrad, invite from China po, mga scholarship, civilians.
Iniimbita ng Chinese?
Opo. Iniimbita. So they take up postgraduate studies in China.
Where in China? Sa military?
Hindi po, iba-iba. Iba-ibang universities nila doon.
Anong inaaral nila? Ano kinukuha nilang course?
Mga postgraduate studies.
Like what?
Mr. Chair, Your Honors.
Like what?
Marami pong depende po sa available na ino-offer nilang kurso, and then tinatanggap ng mga applicants natin dito pumapasa sa proseso nila.
These are private individuals, no?
Yes, mga natin, citizens natin, Mr. Chair, Your Honors. Mga natin.
Yeah, okay lang yun.
That's one way of promoting Chinese influence. Like I said earlier, Mr. Chair, nakakalungkot kasi kalat yan. Even in Western countries, they're doing that. In fact, baka bandang huli, ma-infiltrate na tayo ng PLA quietly without us knowing it. Dahil marami na pala tayong mga kababayan na pinag-aral doon, sinusuportan pa ng Chinese money para mag-aral doon, and then when they come back, we don't know, baka iba ng takbo ng utak na ngayon. And then, pero again, I'm really concerned doon sa mga computer parts natin, computer hardware, kasi alam niyo naman po siguro, taga-DICT, may taga-DICT ba rito, na meron ng way na yung pinanggagalingan ng computer, lalagyan po ng virus yan, and it will be called, if you will, yung sleeper. Matutulog lang po yung virus na yon. Pag dumating sa intended target nila, meron silang pupunditin doon, then yung virus na yon, it will do what is intended, it was intended to do. Yung pong delikado. Kaya nga po, kayo sa military, wag na wag po kayong bumili ng mga computers na galing po sa China. Please lang, wag po talaga.
Can you check on this, Yusek Espino, and please give us a report
At
as
yung
soon
mga
as
personal
possible
po
time.
ninyo, wag din po bumili ng mga cellphone from China. Hindi po. Bumili na kayo. Wala pong i-endorso na brand. Wag lang pong China. Oh. Okay. Pero po yung, ano ba ito? Oh, meron pala itong, ano to? Ano to? Oh, Miss Latel signed deal to build facilities in military camps. Oh, China to. AFP, Miss Latel signed deal to build facilities in military camps. Oh, Miss Latel consortium includes Chinese government. Oh, ba't yung pinayagan to? Oh, magbibuild ng
When
cell
was this
site.
signed,
Yeah.
Senator Rafi? When was this signed?
Kailan ba itong ano to? September 2019, itong article na ito.
2019.
I'm just quoting Rappler, ano? Ito sa article sa Rappler. 2019, September 11, 2019. AFP, Miss Latel signed deal to build facilities in military camps. So, ibig sabihin, yung Chinese ay nakipagpirmahan sa AFP natin na para mag-build ng mga facilities, telecom facilities inside Camp Aguinaldo at sa mga kampo ng military natin.
This was during the previous administration, this
Yes,
was
of course.
in 2019.
Yes.
No?
Ano pong status? Ito ata yung ano, yung dito. Dito. Yes. Ano po na status noon? Na-build na po yung tore ng dito na ang nag-build po China?
Yes, sir. We will just submit a report on Your Honor, sir, regarding that.
Baka pwede yung pakibaklas. Instead, maglagay lang tayo. Okay lang sa akin kung yung Globe, Smart, you know,
Yes, Your Honor.
yung sa atin. Pero kung maglagay po tayo, maglagay tayo ng telecommunication na mga bagay-bagay sa military from China, ibang usapan po yun. Di ba? So baka pwede yung mga telecom facilities, pagbawal na po muna ilagay sa ating military camps just because meron po nangyaring sigalot sa ating bansa ngayon between China and the Philippines. Di ba? So ano po nangyari doon? Wala kayong status?
We do not have a status on that, sir, but we will furnish you a copy of a report.
In fact, if I remember, Mr. Chair, during the last hearing with the ICT, I did mention about this, and the ICT confirmed na may risk nga raw talaga na para allowing. Although may mga ibang telecommunication company tulad ng Smart and Globe na inallow din ng mga kampo ng military natin, pero meron yung risk na i-allow natin yung China na maglagay po, mag-put up ng telecommunication facilities, equipment sa kampo natin, militar. Na nandun yung risk na madali silang pwedeng mag-eavesdrop sa atin. Of all places, bakit sa lupa ng military? Di ba?
At any rate, can you just submit to us the status report of what Senator Rafi has mentioned? Pwede within the week? So we can share it with with some members of this committee. Anyway, this happened during the previous administration, I think. You already have all the documents ready. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Senator Rafi, any other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I hate to be makulit, pero please lang, pakibaklas na po. Yung mga computers na galing China na ngayon ay nasa military facilities, military properties, pakialis, remove immediately, and then ito pong pasilidad na China po ang nag-construct, telecommunication facility, kung pwede ho, i-cancel na po yung contract at paalisin na po. Siguro this is one way to show this Chinese government, na binubuli nyo kami, ito yung kapalit na hindi kami papayag na hanggang ba naman sa loob ng lupa namin nakapasok kayo. Hanggang dyan lang kayo sa laot pero wag na dito sa loob ng Pilipinas. Yun lang po sana message, strong message that we can send to them at least. Yun lang po. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair. Thank you po.
Thank you, Senator Rafi. I know where Senator Rafi is coming from. Talagang, pati naman ako, and I think all other senators here, syempre, madalas na tayo bulihin itong mga Chinese because of their incursions At hindi lang man 10 beses sila pumunta rito sa ating teritoryo, kundi mas maraming beses pa. We filed a lot of diplomatic protests to no avail. Thousands of diplomatic protests to no avail. That's why I know where Senator Rafi is coming from. At any rate, before we adjourn, Senator Joel Villanueva is requesting that his statement be inserted into the records of the committee. Please take note, Comsec. Thank you, Senator Rafi. And again, the committee will create a technical working group to discuss the 2 bills that we were discussing earlier. And the committee secretariat will coordinate with your respective offices to schedule the TWG meetings. And we expect your full cooperation to allow the preparation of the committee report at the soonest possible time. Again, I would like to thank all the resource persons who attended this hearing, and I hope we can have a more bills that will be passed with your full cooperation. May pabol? Tapos na. Thank you very much. Tapos na. If you have any other questions, sa kwarto, sa opisina ko na lang. Anyway, thank you very much again for your presence. Hearing is hereby adjourned.